CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That's the. All right, cool. All right, good. We're now recording, Amar, so we are live. But let me just see if I can see it on my feed here. Hold on just a second. All right. So what we're going to talk about, my friends, Amar and I have, Amar showed me this article from Forbes, right, Amar?
Yeah, Forbes.
About the Mega Roth. It wasn't like I don't know if you call it a backdoor Roth. I'm not sure, but it was actually pretty interesting. So we want to talk about that. And then I had a guy send me an article from a Market Watch about what you need to retire in various states, which I chuckled at. So Mar, if you want to bring that up, I'm trying to get, there we go. All right, cool. We got, from a Market Watch. Just turn that down. All right, cool. There we go. I got the live chat up. All right, sweet. And of course, if you all have any questions, by all means, let us know. We're going to do this on a regular basis for sure. And as we go forward, if you have articles you want us to talk on or anything you want us to talk about in advance, let us know so we can prepare for it. So what's going on with you today there, big man? What's going on in the great state of California?
Yeah, I mean, this time change. I used to love the time change, daylight savings. Now I hate it. So I have two kids, right? 2 and 4, and they just can't get on the right sleep schedule. So lately they've been going to bed at 7 o'clock and waking up at like 5. So it's not good. What about you? How's Pablo doing with the time change?
Oh my goodness. He was up. He does this thing called the Harlem Shake. That's what I call it, where he'll get up out of his Pablo bed and he'll shake. And I'm always like, what? Because I wake up like that. And I'm like, that's okay. Let's go for a walk. Let's go outside. I'm like, like freaking walking like Scooby-Doo through a castle or something, or Shaggy. I take him outside and, he'll pee or something like that. And then, which is fine. But man, I had to do that not once, not twice, not thrice, but whatever 4 is. Last night and there he is. And I was just snoozing away. I said, man, the life of a dog, man. It's just sitting there snoozing. And yet, and I've already given him 2 walks already since I've been up this morning. But he's a nut, man. He is a nut. He's wiring me out for sure.
Yeah.
But no, it's all good. It's beautiful here in Georgia. A freaking emerald blue sky, or what's the color I'm looking for? A blue sky. But it's freaking gorgeous, dude. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah, I can bet. So you want me to put the article up, or do you want to do talking points first, or how should we
got.
So here's the article.
Says, hey, from Michigan, my man Rob, beautiful Worcester, Mass. Rob was not on my live stream the other day, and I said that the Patriots were going to lose, and of course I was right. Denise from Southern California, Amar. Denise is on board from SoCal. Go. What part of Southern Cal are you from, Denise? Sharon, right on. Life insurance and retirement, maybe instead of long-term care. We could talk about that. Are you, Amar? Are you licensed to sell life insurance by chance or no?
Yeah, I'm licensed. Yeah.
Okay, and not saying. I'm just curious. Like, so you have access to the various products that I don't, but that are out there and whatnot.
Yeah. So we use a third-party broker that will shop around.
Okay.
They have like 50 different carriers that they can shop with.
Okay.
So I'm not doing the actual underwriting. We just broker it out to a third-party vendor, third-party broker that shops around for our end client.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It looks like
I'm going to make a list. So I'm taking notes here, Josh. So
okay.
We'll find an article about life insurance versus long-term care. Is that what that was?
Yep. I'm trying to make it so it shows us both. It looks like it's just showing you or me for some reason. It's weird, but all right, whatever. It's strange. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Okay. All right, either way. Then we got someone from Washington State, Mushki. I want to invest in Vanguard ETFs in a taxable account, but recently said someone on Fox said there are problems with these things. I'm not sure about that. So we can dive on that here today, Mushki. We can talk a little bit too, Sharon, about life insurance as opposed to long-term care. I got no qualm talking about that, but just be kind of off the top. And Amar has access to the products that are out there. I'm familiar with the products, but they do change quite a bit. Amar, just real quick before we jump on this, any thoughts on Vanguard ETFs in a taxable account? what would there? I don't know what the problems would be. Any thoughts on why there would be problems with Vanguard ETFs and a taxable account?
No, not off the top of my head. Maybe there's an article that the individual is talking about that could send over, and we can just skim it real quick.
She says she saw someone on Fox. I wonder if she, have you read it all or heard anything about it? I think we talked about this, about index funds getting too big. I wonder if that's what she's talking about. The ETFs or index funds are getting too big. I don't know.
Yeah, there's
hey, Daniel.
There's I guess there was who's the guy that did The Big Short? Not Michael Lewis, but
Michael Burry.
Burry, yeah. And Burry wrote an article that got published that these index funds are getting too big.
Yeah. And
that there's a bubble in index funds. And I don't believe that personally. If we look at market capitalization of index funds versus actively managed funds, you also have to take into account institutional money.
Yeah. And
institutional money is a lion's share of the funds that are out there. And when you look at board seats, I think one of and this is off the top of my head, I haven't prepared for this, but one of the things that they talked about in that article was that when you get something like Vanguard that owns such a large percentage of a company, and eventually that they get board seats, how are they going to vote?
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And because if they are taking an active role in voting, then it's no longer passive, right? It's, they're making decisions for the company.
Yeah, that's what she's referencing. The guy or lady on Fox says index funds are getting too big. Yeah, they're not getting too big. I mean, I did a video on this the other day where I just said, look, index funds are, at least the S&P 500 is a market weighted fund. And so you're buying more and more of your investments are going into the largest stocks and by market capitalization in the country. And so if you want to avoid that, you just buy an equal weighted indexes. Mushke, people are looking for something to write about. There's no other way around that. The idea that index funds are so big that there's going to be what Burry was talking about is that there's no more pricing mechanisms, what he's saying, which is inherently stupid. What? There's always a pricing mechanism if you have a buy and a sell side. If you have a buy and a sell side, there's a pricing mechanism. It doesn't make any sense. So I was
the one thing that I would say is the one thing I would say is that when we look at the investment universe, so you have two extremes, right? You can be 100% passive, 100% active, right? Both of those extremes need each other in order to have appropriate pricing, right? So if everybody, for example, was 100% index funds, then you don't have accurate pricing on securities and you can make an arbitrage, right?
Exactly.
And that's what the active managers are saying, right?
Exactly.
Or Burry's saying. But if everybody was active,
right,
then pricing is very clear. And when pricing is very clear, you could be a passive investor and do just as well. I think what the key thing to look at here is that if you're in a high volume or high traded market, pricing is going to be inherently pretty accurate.
Exactly.
So to say that there's this huge bubble, I wouldn't agree.
Well, if anything, if I'm Michael Burry, wherever his name is, I'm loving it because then I can go against if the herd's going one direction, I think the herd is wrong, then the pricing mechanism absolutely will work in my way. It's an odd concern to have for sure. I kind of chuck, but there's a lot of people because everyone needs something to be fearful of. That's all there is to it, Mar. You know what I'm saying? So we got a couple other folks join us. We got Starling, Jeff, and CG Pauly, and Denise is coming from the South Bay, if you know where that is, LA County. So is that your neck?
LA County. Yeah, well, she's probably pretty close to the 405 fires, the Getty fires there.
Is that because your environmental insanity? They won't let them clear cut the power lines. And to make you feel good about yourself, Amar, Mushke says, thank you both for being rational, logical, and with no hype. I would attribute that to me. Amar is nothing but irrationality.
The engineer in the room.
So let's
Josh, let's go through this article real quick. I think maybe what we do is go through this article and this other article from
Yeah, no,
Market Watch.
Starling sent this.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on.
And
So
then
let's look at the Mega Roth. I thought this was interesting, Mark. Yeah, there you go.
So we all heard of the backdoor Roth IRA in the sense that you can put money into a non-deductible IRA and convert it to a Roth IRA and pay no taxes. Now that is, you got to make sure that you have no other IRAs when you're doing that, because the tax calculation is a percentage of what's deductible over total IRAs. So that is important. Well, what this article is talking about is using your existing qualified plan. So if you have a 401k that has a pre-tax option and a Roth 401k option, you can use that and put the max in, which is $19,000, right? And if you're over 50, there's extra $6,000 that you can put in, so you can max that up to 25. So if you have a TSP, this works for you as well, right? 401A, 457. I'm just trying to think. 403B,
403B as well.
Yeah. So all those qualified plans. And traditionally, you could only put 6,000 or 7,000 if you're 50 or older into a Roth IRA. So part of this is saying, how do we create this, what Forbes calls as a Mega Roth right here, and how the new Secure Act will pretty much cement this. So, and I'm just skipping around here. So I want to go to, they have an example.
Yeah, they show Will, I think. Yeah.
It's right here. So let's say the overall limit is 56,000 in a 401k, or 62,000 if you're over 50, right? And it's right here. And so what they're saying here is that, at first glance, you can put the full 19,000 into a Roth IRA and get some matching, and most people would say that they're done. But if you're an empty nester, if you're like in the last 3 or 5 years of retirement and you want to put away a lot more money, this could be potentially a good thing, in the sense that you can put the difference in this in the after-tax bucket. And so they give an example here of Willard, who's 50, maxes out at 25,000. His company gives him a 5% match, and so that's an additional 7,500. So if you add these two numbers up, right, and you subtract it from the IRS, the ERISA maximum, which is 62 because he's 50 or older, you get that he can still add to his retirement plan an additional 29,500 in the after-tax bucket. And what this article is saying is that with the Secure Act, they're basically going to put it in writing that any after-tax money can be, when you retire, can be put into the Roth IRA. And so one of the things here is that even now his after-tax bucket can go into the Roth IRA, right, Josh?
Yeah. Well, what they're showing, if you scroll up a little bit, I guess you got it. It'll show you that there's literally a rule right there, Revenue Notice 2014-54, that states explicitly that after-tax contributions to be rolled exactly to a Roth, which is pretty interesting to me. So I wasn't aware of that. I mean, I was kind of aware somewhat. I haven't really thought too much about it, but that would say, look, man, if you got the cash flow and you put after-tax contributions, not your gain, not your just the contributions can go into the Roth, which they show you the example down there where this guy's putting like 258,000 or something like that. Keep scrolling down, 295. So he could roll his after-tax contributions of 295 into his Roth IRA, and then the rest of his pre-tax earnings off those contributions would go into his regular IRA.
Yeah.
If the plan allowed.
If the plan allows. So this is something that I think people should check with their employer, like the HR team, if they can do this, right? Number one.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're going to know your plan better than anybody else. And then the second thing is, if the Secure Act goes through, I mean, this is almost now written into the code, right? So I think a lot of people would take advantage of this. And when we look at retirement savings, you want to be able to pull from different buckets from a tax perspective, right? So we've always talked about, you want to make sure you have enough liquidity.
Yeah.
You also want to make sure that when you're withdrawing funds, that you're taking them from different buckets to give you the best tax situation. And maybe what I'll do is, do you want me to draw an example here?
Yeah, because I did want to show something here. We'll go down right where you highlighted one sentence underneath that. Willard can do an in-service withdrawal to the Roth. He could, so at 59 and a half, he could do an in-service withdrawal from the Roth. And the guy who wrote this article, we'll put the link in the show notes. He made it seem as if this is by IRS dictate. I'm not sure that's true. Do you know, like he made it sound like once you hit 59 and a half, Amar, that in-service distributions, in-service withdrawals are automatic. Do you know that to be true? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, so I think it's planned. I believe it's plan dependent.
Me too. That's what I thought.
Once you're 55 or older, right? It's written into the plan.
Yeah.
One of the other things with in-service distributions or doing a 72T distribution could be part of this as well. So you can stretch out this tax-free income for, like an annuity payment for a long period of time.
Well, especially the Secure Act. And that's so the issue that we have here is the Secure Act, as we've talked about before, and I think even you and I, maybe even our first time we did this, Amar, we talked about Secure Act, is that it's going to eliminate your heirs' ability to stretch. The stretch IRA is gone. That's just all there is to it. So everyone talk about the stretch IRA. Once the Secure Act is signed, sealed, and delivered, that's gone. And if you're leaving $500,000 pre-tax, to Amar, and Amar's making $1 million a year, he's going to get hammered because he'll have 10 years in which to just make those distributions out.
And keep in mind, the tax rate is the next dollar, right?
Yeah,
so like if your beneficiaries are earning in the 22% tax bracket, for example, it's the next dollar that they get taxed on, right? So it's not like a blended rate of what you have or like the long-term capital gains rate. That rate can go up.
Now, one of the things, so this is good for if you're a 1099 employee, independent contractor, if you're self-employed, maybe a realtor, you had a good couple of years or something like that. You see what I'm saying? Because I think realtors are self-employed. And
so if they have a solo 401k,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
In a solo 401k, you can have a pre-tax bucket, a Roth bucket, and then a Roth 401k bucket, and an after-tax bucket. Right. So
absolutely.
It all depends on your plan documents. It's really important to kind of look at that. And one thing Josh and I forgot to mention in the beginning is this is purely educational. We're just reading articles and reviewing it. I'm licensed, so I have to say that I'm not giving advice and stuff like that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So the issue is though, if you have, let's say you're 55 years old, you're a realtor and you're making bank, and you're going to do it for 5 more years. And you're like, man, my goal would be to retire at 60, pull my money from my IRAs out while I'm deferring Social Security. And I'd like to leave more and more of Roth IRAs and Social Security so I can take tax-free income later on down the road. You're willing to pay a little bit more tax today while the Trump tax bills are in effect, and maybe you're married filing jointly, and maybe you can still have some, write-offs. I don't know, but anyway, you say I'm going to pay a little bit more tax today in order to have the big benefits later on down the road. And if you're self-employed, this could be something good for you. Because remember, the 401k, 403b, these are all somewhat synonymous. But with the 401k, you have 3 funding sources. You got your contributions, your employer contributions, and then profit sharing. So if you are the employer and the employee, like this guy was saying tomorrow, I think he said 62,000 or something like that. And that's a lot of flipping money that can go into one of these accounts. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You do that for a couple of years, man, you're sitting nicely.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in account, like if you're self-employed and you have high income, you'll probably want to maximize your TBI deduction, right? So you could even do the pre-tax part of the 19 or the 25,000 and then do the after-tax contributions as well. So that way you're still getting the QBI if you're in that situation.
And that's where we just got to talk to a tax person on that. That's an area that I'm absolutely not an expert by any stretch, even though I did get QBI last year, Amar. I got a QBI deduction, if you can believe that. That's pretty sweet. That was I think I got $5,000, which is a credit against my taxable income. I'm just looking at comments. One thing I didn't like about this guy, and I emailed Amar before we got on here, is he was talking about highly compensated employees, and I don't know that to be true here. And so we're not going to dive into this, but when you're talking about this stuff with 401k plans, if you're an employee, it makes it somewhat restricting, because if there is something called HCEs, and you can't have it top heavy, which means the wealthier employees get more benefit than the average riffraff. So because of that, if it's top heavy, the IRS frowns on it and will make it not so top heavy. This guy was stating a couple things that I don't know this to be true, actually, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but the whole point is, if you are looking at this and you are an employer, i.e. you own your own firm, or you're responsible for your own firm's retirement plan, you definitely need competent advice on this stuff. And frankly, there isn't that many competent advisors when it comes to these, because they're few and far between. And just because a CPA has a CPA after his name, or a CFP has a CFP after his name, that's not. Do you do this stuff, Amar? I mean, do you go into 401k plans, solo Ks, and all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't sell solo 401ks or anything like that. You have to have a defined contribution license to be in that world. But we do strategies. I mean,
but you're not sponsored. You're not like, you don't manage a 401k or anything like that.
No,
Okay.
Not right now. No.
I used to do that when I was a broker, and we had everything through American Funds, and I had not a lot, but 4 or 5 dental shops, and that was good. It was hard though, because you're talking to the dentists who have the money, the dental hygienists make real good money, and everybody else. I enjoyed it immensely, but if you're going into, my friends, to a company that has a lot of plans under their belt, and they're offering individual guidance, that I'm telling you, you got to be careful there, because that is combining. That's a lot of work, and the ball's going to be dropped someplace for sure. But anyway, I think this is pretty interesting, and just more along the lines of Secure Act, if nothing else.
Yeah, and so this is, I think one of the big takeaways is to look at the Secure Act and see what happens with that, because this will create this opportunity, if you will, to put a lot more money away. And the article is not long; it just ends right here. So,
no, we'll put it in the show notes. My man Harry from Texas says he falls in that category, highly compensated but locked out of after-tax contributions because it's top heavy.
Yeah.
That's where I'm wondering why the state, and I don't want to get too deep again. I keep saying that, but I get deep into it. It's the nature of my brain functioning, Amar. But you got things called safe harbors. And when I was doing 401k plans, you have a safe harbor which protected the highly compensated from being able to put more in, because all the other employees are guaranteed a 3% match. So I'm not sure why this guy doesn't reference that. All right, so Fred says, great topic. By the way, go Ravens. So Fred is going to be banned from the channel. Freaking Ravens. You like football at all, Amar?
Well, I used to. I mean, we had San Diego Chargers, and then now they're in Los Angeles.
You know who else you used to have back there in San Diego? The San Diego Clippers. That might be
Clippers. Yeah, basketball. Okay, yeah, basketball. Oh yeah, I mean,
before your time.
No, I have a Clippers, jersey or whatever. But
that's cool. All right. We got
now they're a totally different team. So
because they went to LA.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. We got another person. Speaking of realtors, Mary is interested in insurance, a long-term care rider. We'll take a gander at that here today, Mary, for sure. I'm just reading some comments real quick, Amar, then we'll get to this article that Starling sent to us, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to just close it, or just wait. Yeah.
Denise, can I move mutual fund into a non-deductible IRA and then move to a Roth if it actually happens? I guess you talked about Secure Act. So Denise says, from your neck of the woods, Amar, can I move mutual funds into I'm assuming she's saying mutual funds in a taxable account.
Yeah, so no, so contributions to an IRA, Roth IRA have to be cash contributions. You can't transfer in-kind securities into a plan.
Yep, good. And then Mushki says she's so confused. It is confusing. I mean, there's no other way around that. It's confusing as all get out. And that's why unless you're falling into a specific category, it's a tough one. This is why these things are so tough to just paint with a broad broad brush. Should I just do this? I don't know. I mean, because we don't know your taxes. We don't know any. That's a tough one for sure.
Yeah, especially when we're reviewing articles, it's going to be extremely tough because you have to take your personal circumstances into account with all of this. So when you're looking whether you should do a strategy or not, it really depends on your cash flows in retirement and working backwards to see what you need to do to reach your goal. So.
And also how long you're going to live. I mean, at the end of the day, the longer you live, the more beneficial tax-free is. But, I mean, if you're smoking a carton of Cools a day and you're driving a motorcycle without a helmet on at 150 miles an hour and you're skydiving without a parachute, then you're probably not going to be around for that long. Just real quick, my man Mark says, my links on my website are not working. Okay, so I got to get that looked at. That's weird. The links on my website are not working. So I appreciate that, Mark. I will look at that. Jennifer Hamilton says, Amar, do you still have to have the Roth account 5 years if you roll over after-tax 401k contributions before you can withdraw?
Yes. So the 5-year rule is still there. And one of the things most people, if you don't already have a Roth IRA, is timing it so that you exceed that 5-year rule. So that is an important piece to mention. Yeah.
Now, if I may, just on that, the 5-year rule is focuses on once you're over 59.5, the earnings. Always remember that. I just look at like earnings. An IRA. Yeah. If you're over 59.5, you have access to your IRA without penalty. Well, the answer is yes. Do you have access to your IRA without tax? The answer is no. And if you kind of look at it like that with a Roth, is you have access to your principal without penalties, after you did the conversion, but you don't have access to the gains. And it inherently makes sense because you've already paid taxes on the principal, if that makes sense. It's the gains. So
it's only the gains that are attributable to the 5-year rule is another way of saying it. Yeah.
Yes, that was much easier. So Mushki again says, I'm 59 and she puts $25K into her company's 401k, but it doesn't match. Then I put $7,000 into my own Roth IRA. How does that apply to me?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, right, so she's putting 25. So she's getting the 62 as her max because she's over 50, right? So if you do 62 minus 25, that's like 75, 3,750. Is that, did I did that? 37,500?
Yeah.
Did I do that math right? Yeah.
Something like that. Let's just say 35 for simplicity, but yeah.
Yeah. So that you can put in the after tax if you have that as an option. Now, again, so the thing that we look at from a tax perspective, and Josh and I are not CPAs or tax planners, but in retirement, you have your pension, Social Security, other streams of income. You have your RMD from your IRAs, but you also have to factor in the interest and dividends that you're getting from your taxable accounts. And so by putting money here, you're reducing future interest and dividends on those after-tax accounts as well.
And then if you do the 25 to your Roth 401k, Mushki, and then you do the 30, whatever you said, 37,000 to your after-tax, and then you can, later on, you move that after-tax into your Roth IRA once you separate from service. That's a lot of Roth IRA money for sure, without question. I just saw something. Oh, Amar, real quick.
Yeah, that's 44,000 going to your Roth. Like the after tax or tax free bucket, whatever you want to call it, per year.
What tax strategies should a highly compensated employee follow after maxing out the Roth for the 401k and HSA? This is Chris. He says, Christopher. Any thoughts, Amar? So this guy says he's maxing out his retirement plan, his HSA. Any thoughts on other things tax favorable to do?
And I mean, if it's a small company and they can do a defined benefit plan, that could be an option. If it's a family business, right? and you can have that. But if you're part of a larger company, I would be looking at cash flow streams in retirement. Like, what do you actually need? So some of that conversation would be starting to pay some more taxes. I know the question was, how do you reduce your taxes? But you should look at your tax picture overall over a period of time.
Exactly.
And
I agree more.
you may need to say, like, hey, depending on your spending in retirement, et cetera. I mean, these questions are very difficult without understanding more of somebody's background.
I would, I could 100%. And I think, Amar, a lot of people get caught up in the idea of I got to reduce taxes today without looking at the big picture of the future. Sometimes it just pays to bite the bullet today in order to avoid a bigger one in the future, for sure. So you just got to look at the big picture.
And some of the things, like if it's a highly compensated employee, they may have access to insurance benefits through their work that are portable. So, for example, like long-term care insurance that is portable.
Yeah.
So it may not be just strictly from an investment standpoint. One of the things, if you're charitably inclined, maybe looking at a donor advised fund. So let's say you have 5 years left till retirement, and you gift to a church or whatever, some nonprofit, and you want to continuously do that throughout your retirement as well. Well, during your working years, it may make sense to dump 2 or 3 years worth of gifting into a donor advised fund to get the deduction now.
Yeah.
Because in retirement, you may not be,
your
expenses there could be some arbitrage based off of your expenses in retirement versus.
Well, you're probably not going to have the. You're not going to be able to itemize. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. So you could be in the standard deduction. I mean, so that's another.
We got to talk about donor advised funds. You had mentioned that before, Mar, and we'll definitely. I'm a huge fan of DAFs, donor advised funds, and they're a poor man's private foundation. I wouldn't
even say poor man. I even have people that have a significant wealth.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying you don't need to be the Ford Foundation and drink your tea with your finger up like that. Go ooh, you're drinking some Budweiser or something like that and fishing off the coast of North Carolina like my man Jeff here. And but I mean, it's a poor man's trust or foundation that you don't need to be poor.
Yeah, and I think it works well for people that are on the border of standard deduction and itemizing, right? And they still have other things that they can do. So one of the strategies, again, talk to your CPA and all the other things, is that when the years that you are going to itemize is to upfront fund these donor advised funds and get a bigger deduction those years, and then switch over to standard deduction the following years.
Yeah, no,
and then you can do it back and forth, and So, I think I have one of my clients that we itemize 1 year, and 2 years do standard deductions, and then itemize again, and then 2 years standard deduction. So, I mean, you can get as creative as you want with that side.
But it means you got to be actively doing your taxes, and that's the problem I have with a lot of tax folks is that they're reactionary, not what's the other word?
Proactive.
Proactive.
And, so like the thing with all, and maybe this is like a plug or whatever you want to call it, but like when you look at from a tax perspective, your CPA is looking backwards. Like, what can you do for 2019, right? Unless you're meeting with them today, right? Like if you're taking a proactive approach before the year end, that would be, I would say, is a good tax professional. Your estate planner is working with you whenever they want, once every 3 to 5 years to update documents or whatnot. But strategies change, and your actual value of securities change. Like one of the things we can talk about is a qualified personal residence trust, or even if you have a small business and you gift shares into an annuity trust and grantor retained annuity trust, and the business goes up, well, the estate planning work. But what if your business value goes down, right? Is there a way that you can substitute or redo that? And so like your attorneys are not taking an active valuation of where your company values are, where your real estate values are, or securities. So in my opinion, working with an advisor, and I know this is loaded because I'm an advisor, right? But being I would say even as an individual being proactive, That's the only way you're going to be able to take advantage of all these things, is to be on a proactive basis.
I mean, I could not agree more, without question. And however you do it, my friends, it's let's see, Amar, you can exit that if you want. We got a couple.
So we're going to this Market Watch article.
Let me just hold on just a second. I saw Rob, my man, the Bruins fan. He says his daughter is a dental hygienist, and she makes good money for a 2-year education. Could not agree more, man. That's some of my best clients are dental hygienists, that's for sure. Jennifer said she has the same question as she's maxed out her 401k. What can she do to avoid taxes? I just want to kind of real quick talk on that too. If the one thing we don't want you to do if you maxed out your everyone they default to deferred income, and I don't do that so much. I think it's okay to pay a little bit more tax today as income, and to qualify for qualified dividends and then long-term capital gains. And so what I say to people, like, look, man, and I'm going to show you my little chart here. It's gonna be hard.
You want me to stop sharing my screen?
Yeah, for just a second, Amar. We got 3 things here, 3 circles. We have tax deferred, tax free, and taxable. All right. So what that means is taxable is like a mutual fund, your bank account, your brokerage account. Tax deferred is your 401k, 403b, and tax free is your life insurance and your Roth. And the issue here is most people have most of their money in the tax deferred account. And I don't think that's good. In fact, I know it's not good. We want more money in these guys. The reason for that is because if you have money in a taxable brokerage account, and let's just say it doesn't pay much in terms of dividends or long-term capital gains because it's in ETFs that are not heavily traded and maybe growth-oriented ETFs, essentially that sucker is tax-free because the minimal amount of income it pays may or may not be under your standard deduction, but it could still be taxed much more favorably than money coming out of a tax-deferred account, which comes out as OI. And so what I tell people is like, look, so going back to Jennifer, you maxed out your 401k, and you're like, what else do I do now? And like Chris said, he maxed out his HSA. Well, put in like a Vanguard small cap growth fund, the ETF, where it doesn't have a lot of turnover, so there won't be long-term capital gains. And this is me talking, by the way. It's not a Mar. Just want any compliance guys out there.
Yeah. Not a recommendation.
No, but just something that's growth-oriented with minimal dividends and minimal turnover, i.e. capital gains. That way, you're not going to get much, if any, of it, what's called 1099. And I just think people don't do that all the time. They say, I'm going to do a traditional IRA and I'm going to do a variable annuity. I'm like, stop. Pay a little bit more tax today to avoid the huge tax consequence in the future. Anything you want to add to that, Amar?
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 things I would add to that. Like, so if you bring up your diagram, right, the 3 circles, like right where you drew them, they're all proportional to each other. And when you said that most people have in their 401k, I mean, ratio wise, they shouldn't be exactly equal either. Right?
Like that, ratio wise.
Yeah.
So Charlie Brown's face. Doesn't that look like Charlie Brown?
Yeah, so like we want to have some diversification. And if we just look at it from a tax perspective, let's say that you're a married individual and you need $100,000 a year to live off of. If you're taking all that, or let's say you need $10,000 a month, so 120, which is high. And so I'm just giving you an example. And you have 30,000 from Social Security. So let's just say 100,000 you have to take out from your 401k. You're roughly in the 24% tax bracket. So you're going to actually have to withdraw 125,000 to get that 100,000 in lifestyle, right? And so if we take 50,000 from a 401k and 50,000 from a Roth IRA is not taxable. The 401k, 50,000, you maybe take out 63, 64, somewhere in there. So, I mean, you can save like about 9 or 10,000 in taxes per year and still get the same lifestyle, right? 100,000
right.
From investments. And you multiply that years in retirement. So like if we're thinking about saving taxes now over the next like 4 to 7 years prior to retirement. But if you look while you're in retirement, that could be 20, 30, for some people, 40 plus years.
Okay, hold on just a second. The NFL is going to move the Chargers to London. You heard that too?
Yeah, again. Well, in San Diego, there's British Airways nonstop, so that's the only saving grace.
Which is safer, Amar? My man from Mass says, which is safer, consumer staples or consumer discretionary ETF? You want to take a shot at that? I don't know how you say which is safer or not, but if you have some knowledge that you want to shine on that.
I don't know what and it depends on your definition of safer, right? I mean, because like one could have more volatility, but theoretically be safer. Like, so one of the things that most analysts on their calls are looking at is inventory, the cost of inventory, right? So if we do go into a recessionary environment, you have to store all these products and stuff like that. So consumer staples seems to have taken on more inventory, number one, and it has taken on more debt. So like we see these buybacks of stocks, right? So it's financing with debt. If you have your debt levels go up, that means your debt to income ratios are going to go a little screwy. And if you have an environment where your income goes down, that will put a lot of pressure. And so I would look at, debt to income ratios between the two, right? And then how much inventory and then make a kind of path that way. Unfortunately, on these videos, I can't give recommendations because I'm a registered investment advisor, meaning that, I can only do educational based stuff. I can't.
There's nothing, but even that, I mean, what's safe is, I mean, it's only safe until it's not anymore. Right? So I don't know. Just at the end of the day, you got something that looks, I remember Amar back in 2005, floating rate bond funds. And I had a guy from Hartford, nice guy, and I liked him, come to my office, said, floating rate bond funds have never had a down year. And they've been around for 15 years, and they've averaged, in between stocks and bonds. Yeah. Oh, that's pretty good. And then floating rate bond funds proceeded to get destroyed in the chaos of 2007 and 8. And I just
so it's kind of funny you bring that up because in 2008 there was a liquidity crisis, right?
Yes.
Like commercial paper was defaulting, which has never happened.
Yes.
Money market accounts went down by 2 cents, right? Like, some companies had to shore those up, right? They would step in, the brokerage houses, right? And we look at today, what is the Fed doing? It's creating short-term liquidity again, right? So I know we're not doing quantitative easing, but
kind of
we're printing like 60 billion plus a month here. So
I mean, the Fed's an active Fed, and if the funny thing is, the active Fed, do we have a history of the Fed being active, and it actually does not end up resulting in recessions? And the answer is, of course not. And so, but look, at the end of the day, I mean, that's what I say to people all the time. I say, look, there's always a recession coming. Always. You can never get around that. It's the business cycle. The only way not to have a recession is to go completely socialist, and then we're always in a recession. So it's forever looming, forever imminent, and of course, given that we're going to a political year, it's going to be even more thought out. So it's just nuts.
Let's hop into this Market Watch article. Exactly. Because we're going to be at close to an hour here pretty shortly. So, so this Market Watch article was sent by Starling, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And it says, "Are you on track?" And it says the cost of retirement. It goes through, the rate of growth in some of these cities, and then I guess there's a link to this how they created this map to see how much, which is over here. Can you see that all right?
Yeah. Make it bigger if you can.
Yeah, just
hit Control plus sign.
Well, that zooms it in. But
good. There you go. That's good.
It doesn't make my screen full screen, so I was trying to get rid of all this stuff up here.
I see you got some up there. Trump's GOP-D. So I see you got a YouTube video of something that Trump's talking about.
Yeah.
Also, you got Iron Man link there too.
Yeah. Yeah, so
anyway, if you look real quick, Amar, so it's hard to see the pink, but let's look at Arizona. They say you need $1 million to retire comfortably in Arizona. They say you need 661,000 to retire comfortably in Mississippi. And I say this is freaking stupid. It's the idea that you need. But I mean, look, it's graphic. It's easy to see. It scares people. It's a perfect clickbait. And here we are clicking it. And because it's the idea that you need 1.1 million in my state of Maine to retire comfortably is absurd. No one in Maine has 1.1 million. When I say no one, I'm being facetious. There are a few people who do. The vast majority of that friggin' state doesn't have $1 million that within freaking 20 miles of them. That's for sure, because Maine's a very poor state. And so the idea that the 1.2 million people there, they're all not going to retire comfortably. It's just that the whole thing, it just infuriates me, because they're saying right here that you need this 661,000 in Mississippi. You need to retire comfortably. Just think how absurd that is, Amar. In Mississippi, yeah. You know what I'm saying? You don't. It's just more chatter to get. It's just clickbait. Is all it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I felt when I read this article was essentially like, they don't understand, like, whoever put this together is basing off certain fixed expenses for a certain period of time. And like, they're putting a basket of fixed expenses and they're trying to get these numbers.
Yeah.
Reality is that we know that, I mean, the travel cost is not included in this, right? What if you need long-term care? You know, as you grow older, you may need help, right? What if you travel? What if you're doing gifting to your children? I mean, none of that type of stuff is included in here. So I wouldn't really give much credence to this, because I definitely know there are people that have less than 1.5 million that are retiring in California. And I definitely know that there are people that have more than, 738,000 in Kentucky that are retiring, right? Like, so it depends on your lifestyle. I think you managing expenses has a bigger influence than like a chart like this.
That's Amar. That's the number one thing. You cannot do a retirement plan until you know expenses. And the issue is, how do you know them? And this will go into, I do want to talk a little bit, because I had a couple people ask about long-term care. How do you know expenses? You can close out this so we can go back to full screen if you want. Well, you don't know what your expenses are going to be, because you have never retired. And I stress this enough, is like, you are going on some guesstimates, but we know, for example, I will not be in this house right here when I retire. So for me to say I'm going to base a retirement plan on how much it costs to maintain this home is friggin' stupid, because this is a home for a family of 6 and 7 with my new son back there, Pablo. And we're not going to have this house when my kids are out. We're going to have, it's going to be Charlotte and me in a 3 and 2, someplace, who knows, you know what I'm saying? And it's just not going to be the same thing. So how do I project that? Well, I use the best evidence available, which, a $250,000 home, $200,000, I don't know what it'd be. Sell this sucker, hopefully with, get enough cash to buy that new home. And immediately I've reduced my mortgage. I don't have any mortgage, and my property taxes decline. So what was my utility bill? I think I got my electric bill right here. And in the month of July, I had 2,358 kilowatt hours use of electricity. We don't water the grass all that much, so the water bill says $50 a month. Will those be the same? Probably not, because we have an acre. We probably have, I think, 5,000 square. We have about 1.1 acres here, but about 5,000 square feet of grass. We're not gonna have that when I retire. So that's the whole thing. It's like, you just kind of think this through. Now, if you're already living in the place you're going to retire to, well, you have a pretty good gauge of what it's going to cost. But if you're going to move or you're going to downsize, well, you got to take that consideration for sure. Did they stay in their house when they retired, or did they downsize, Amar?
Yeah, I mean, they stayed in the same house. And in fact, my mom lives in the same house. So, okay. I think that, this is maybe another conversation point, is if a spouse passes away, what do we see as advisors actually happen, right? Because some people say, oh, we're going to stay in the same house. They end up redecorating the house because the house reminds them of their spouse. And then a couple of years later, they say, oh, I'm going to move to be closer to the children, right? So those are potentially some added costs that we're not planned for. Houses is difficult, because like you were saying, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I mean, if you're finding a 3-bedroom and 2-bath in San Diego, the price could drastically vary just within 5 miles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, that's
Uh,
why you got to get it. I mean, you have to have some kind of idea of where you're going to be. You see what I'm
yeah.
saying? I mean, because housing is a big expense, and if you can find some way to reduce your housing, somehow you'll be better off. My man, this is funny. My man Rob says his electric bill was cut in half when his daughters moved out. I think it's true. I mean, you think about it, the amount of draw from the hair dryer, anything that's heats and is plugged into a freaking outlet, an American outlet AC, is always going to be a significant draw on your electric bill. So as my wife and my 2 daughters, I'm like, can you just go outside and do that with the natural sun and air? Of course, no. The answer is
you're going to
no.
get yourself in trouble.
That's what I'm saying, right? Sorry. My wife isn't watching this. I said, do you really need to do that for an hour? Oh, yeah. But anyway, I thought it's funny that the electric bill.
So like the big draws would be a refrigerator is probably more efficient these days.
Fridge not much of a draw. Is anything that has a heating element, oven.
Yeah, so it's all heating because like even TVs now have LED lighting and stuff like that. So they're low energy.
I mean, even like your fridge, your TV. I mean, hell, you can run your fridge is probably running at 700 watts. You know what I'm saying? And when the compressor kicks on, it's probably 1100. That's not a big draw. It's the things like your non-LED lights that people put outside their front, by the garage and stuff like that. If those things, if those add up, if they're regular incandescent, I've done a number of videos and posts on this where I say $50 a month just turning out my incandescent light bulbs that I have above my garage and inside and outside my house with LEDs because there's so much of a draw. All right, so let's talk real quick, and next week we'll dive into it more. But just on long-term care using a life insurance. So back in the day, there's something called Lincoln Money Guard, and I loved Lincoln Money Guard. Are you familiar with that by chance, Tamara? Have you ever heard of it?
The annuity with the rider.
It was a life insurance contract.
Yeah.
So what it was is is essentially a paid up whole life. You say, okay, Lincoln, I'm going to give you $50,000. At my death, I'll either have, I think it's like $212,000 of death benefit that transfers to my heirs. I'll always have access to that $50,000. I won't have any access to growth, but I'll always have access to that, where if I later on down the road I need it. But I'll also have, I can't remember the amount, but this is going on 15 years ago now. Damn, I'm getting old, man. 15 years, I got 2005. Yeah. They got like 97 is like 2 times essentially the initial cash value amount. So let's just say $100,000. So they got $100,000 of long-term care benefit, essentially accelerated death benefit. And they just dumped in $50,000. So they know they're going to get their money back by dying. Their spouse will get 2.5 times their whatever it was. They knew they were going to get at least some portion of the money back by a tax-free long-term care component. Or if they later on they hated the company or they needed the cash, they have access to it. I was a big fan of that. And they have it, but those products are coming. They're even better now. And I haven't priced them or anything, but I'm a fan because long-term care, I have long-term care. My wife and I do. And, every year I get this, I think it's a guaranteed payout option, which is if I want to increase my long-term care benefit, I have to increase my premium with the rate of inflation. And every year that sucker just goes up and up and up. Now I got it 10 years ago, so it's a lot cheaper when I was 39 than it would be now. But those are expensive products. And
I was just going to ask you, like, have they done a rate increase in the last 5 years?
Well, it's flexible. You don't have to pay the rate increase. That's a GPO. I think it's GPO. They say if you want to keep up with the cost of what they anticipate as long-term care, you just have to pay a higher premium, and then it won't be compounded with inflation like it used to be in the old days. You can buy the compounding if you want.
Yeah, the COLA.
Exactly, which is fine. You can buy it or not, but I'm telling you, that's expensive. And so the issue there is you're paying and paying and paying for a product that you're not likely to use. And that's why I like the life insurance component, because it says you have access. You're going to get your money back, or you'll get it through an insurance policy. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, long-term care, I think I read a statistic a while back that 1 out of every 3 people who are 60 or older will use long-term care.
Yes, but be careful with that. People hear that and they think it's nursing home. It is not nursing home.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone's going to provide some level of assistance for you.
Yeah.
And that could be anything. You see what I'm
It could
saying?
be anything, right?
Such a freaking scam, dude.
And I look at it this way: if you live a long life, if you don't die, you grow older and you tend to need more help.
Yes.
How are you going to get that help?
Inherently.
Long-term care could be part of that solution. It could also be family. It could be also.
Well, I got to stop. Long-term care and family are not mutually exclusive. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what they're leading people.
It can be both. Yeah.
It is both. Most of the time, the family is long-term care. And so if we take one of every 3 people above 65 needs some form of long-term care, that allows people to think, oh my goodness, this is, freaking, an immigrant from Nigeria is going to change my diapers. And that's not true. It could, for me, my wife will take care of me to some regard, and it could be anything tomorrow. It's the media has let that on to be, it infuriates me, man, because it's fake.
But so let me give an example, maybe kind of, maybe slightly different in the sense that having a policy, heck, you've paid for it now. Right. You've paid for it. So when you do need care, you're more likely to use it to get the care. Right. So depending on your personality, if you're a saver or your parents were from the Depression era and all you've done is learn to save and never spend, when you need care, you're less likely to actually spend to get the care that you need. And so from a long-term care insurance policy, like we had a partnership policy for my dad. Yeah. So somebody came in and said, all right, we need wheelchair access here. We need, they have 2 stories. So they needed like one of those elevator lift chairs.
Absolutely.
And some of those things got done. Whereas if my parents didn't have a policy, we would probably say, all right, we can use the downstairs bedroom, like you would improvise or you'd figure out a way to make it work. So, I also look at long-term care
because life insurance component says you get the best of both worlds. If you don't need the long-term care, you'll have it as a death benefit. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you got to be careful because it is expensive, right? Like, because they're taking 2 benefits and they're putting into one.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're trying to use the probabilities that you're gonna use one of them, so they have to cover their cost, right? So it is expensive.
Not stupid. They know they're covering 2 risks, and both risks are competing. The longer you live, the more likely, like you said, you need long-term care. The less you live, well, inherently, the more likely they're going to have a life insurance payout. So inherently, there's going to be more expensive on either. I 100% agree. Yeah. But that's a nice thing if you got, just say you got some, I hate to say dead asset because, there is no such thing as a dead asset. But if you got an account that's just sitting there floundering in a 1% money market, you're like, I don't know. Well, if you can get underwritten, buy a long-term care or a life insurance policy. Maybe I'm not, I don't know not you, Mar, but whoever's watching the circumstance. But you look at a life insurance with a long-term care policy. You spend $50,000, and at least you got that asset covered. I think it's actually not a bad move because going back to what you said earlier too, Mar, if you're in a 24% tax bracket and you're going to self-finance your long-term care. Well, if you have everything bulk in an IRA, it takes 124 to pay for $100,000 long-term care. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Because you got to pull the money out. It's taxable. And I think.
Well, yeah, and I look at also like stress on the portfolio, right?
Yes.
So if we're like, retirement planning is kind of like a bell curve shape, right? Like as you get closer to making retirement reality, expenses can sway it one way or another really quick, and so. If you have long-term care expense, let's say a married couple, one spouse needs long-term care, you still have the other spouse that has normal expenses.
Yeah.
Right. And then if there's a big drawdown, and then you don't need care, how does a surviving spouse make ends meet? Because the portfolio would be drastically less.
My man says, Quincy, I don't think Josh is going to Virginia now because the Democrats now control the whole state. You're right. Quincy, you read about mine. I thought that myself this morning. I don't know if you saw the election returns yesterday, but the Democrats took over. And so I said, I guess I got to write Virginia off my retirement destinations. Because Denise loves loves. She said traffic sucks in your neck of the woods tomorrow, but she goes once she retires, she can work around that. My man Rob says Massachusetts is reasonable. Good flights there. Just the real estate taxes are high, and that's all good, man. Yeah, right on. That's what Quincy said. You're gonna be California Mar. You're gonna stay there until you're
forever.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, you talk about the weather. You really ought to see San Diego weather. It's it's like Groundhog's Day, you know.
Yeah, I don't like that. I like the Four Seasons, brother.
Yeah, see, that's like my wife. My wife's from Baltimore.
Yeah.
My wife likes but so the beauty about living in Southern California, you're an hour away from the desert, hour away from the mountains.
Well, I get all that, but it's not right there. I walked out this morning. It was freezing my tush off when I took old Pablo out for the first of his 1,000 walks today. Now I'm in shorts, you know what I'm saying? And when I come back later on this evening, I'll be back in, a hoodie and whatnot with a beautiful, beautiful foliage. You don't have foliage because you don't have very trees out there. I mean, you're still
no.
So I need a tree, man.
Yeah, we drive about maybe 30 to, I would say, an hour outside of San Diego to see the colors. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a West Coast. You're a laid-back guy. I'm too intense. I'm an East Coast guy. Yeah. So you folks on the West Coast like, man, Josh, relax, dude. I'm like, nah, I get it. I'm too hyper. All right, so here's Jennifer from Washington State. Says Four Seasons there. I think they got 2, right? They got gray for 9 months and sunny for 3, I think. So let's do this, Amar. We'll hang this up. We've had, I think we had at one point about 65 people on. So that's good. So as we start these videos and do them on a regular basis, more and more people show up, which is good. It's fun. It's fun to do and get comments. What you can do is, and I'll share this with you offline, but you can actually look at the comments too. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to play my disclosure for compliance purposes. Yep. So just bear with me here.
Yep.
All right. And here, I'm going to hit play. Let me know if you can hear it.
All right.
Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. As always, please remember, investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional. Client First Capital, LLC is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Client First Capital, LLC and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advice may be rendered by Client First Capital, LLC unless a client service agreement is in place.
Cool. Thank you.
Is that your wife? Is she reading that?
No, it's like a voiceover thing.
Okay. So, because your wife sounds very professional, if that was her. Before we hang up, guys, just I got an email from a man who's Indian, not American Indian, but Indian, and he just went back because he had to go take care of his family back there. I want to share a story real quick. It'll take 2 seconds, but don't put off happiness if you can enjoy today. Because my man here, he by the grace of God did he survive. He had a young man, as an MD, a young guy, like 35 years old. He came down with some serious, what he thought was life-threatening. And long story short, he ended up meeting his wife and having a kid. The whole thing is just a wonderful, wonderful story. But now he's taking care of his own parents out in India. And I sit there and I do struggle a lot with people, young folks in particular, who are just getting depressed. We see that with white guys in particular. There's more white guys killing themselves now than there's ever been. And it boggles me because we're sitting here in this mass amount of abundance. But it's not about the abundance. It's just about having the ability to have a reason to exist. And my man here, obviously has a reason to exist with his wife and kids that he never thought he would have and helping his parents out. But, I wish I've never had depression or anything like that. Tomorrow, I don't know what that's like, but I hope that if there's anyone watching who's having that kind of thought that they don't matter, that they do, because here's a guy, mean, it was, he thought he had like a couple weeks to live, you know what I'm saying, Amar? And I don't know what thought process passed through his mind about, you know, taking himself out or anything like that. But if he would have done that, he would not have his wife and would not have his children to show for it. And I just, the reason I want to go on this diatribe is because I think we focus a lot on the numbers, which is good. But what's the number serving? What's the point we're serving? You know, we're not serving retirement. Retirement is supposed to serve us. Our investments are supposed to serve us. And if we focus it differently, that I need to do this to serve my money, to serve my company, to serve my retirement, we're going to overlook the important thing, which is your enjoyment, man. And if your enjoyment is dictated on the amount of freaking net worth you have, that's a problem. Because like my man, another guy just said, Dan, he says, you can retire on Social Security. If that's all you got and you can be happy with your Social Security income, freaking more power to you. More power.
Yeah. And that's really good to say, because we want to focus on values. Like, what do you value? If you value traveling, and we look at your budget and you're spending, you know, $1,000 a month eating out.
Yes. Yeah.
Your decision making, your behavior is misaligned. And really what we should be doing is aligning our values with our goals and our goals with our behaviors, right? And so from there, we want to make sure that we've identified your values, making sure that how our spending habits are, our financial decision making is aligned with what we value.
Yeah, absolutely. If y'all have, audience, any tagline that Amar and I should use, we're thinking about, we haven't really thought that much, but I mean, some kind of, you know, some of these guys have, what do you say, wealthaholics or something like that. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it'd be fun to have a little tagline that we could say, you're tuned into the Amar and Josh, you know, freaking Fight Club, or I don't know what it would be. If you have anything you can think of that'd be kind of catchy, just remember every Wednesday at noon we'll be doing this. So put it on your calendar. Send some questions in advance, certainly while we're doing this, and then we'll just keep doing this going forward until the regulators tell us to shut the hell up. But until then, man, I appreciate y'all being here. Like I said, we've had a record for our own turnout so far, Mar, and hopefully that will build, and we'll just see how this shakes out, man.
Sounds good.
Well,
Talk to you soon.
Appreciate you being here, brother. Thanks, man. I'm going to end this. Thanks, guys, for being here. All right. See you. End meeting.